What's good, everybody? Pete here at Spawn Fly Fish. We got a fun one for you today. I'm going to make this a little bit challenging, not just for myself and not just for Josh with the camera, but for you at home. So today we're going to attempt the Leggy Boi feathered game changer. Grab your stuff and let's have some fun. Alright, so let's begin this journey today with a 9mm articulated bulk shank from Spawn Fly Fish. For the thread today, I've got some UniTHread. Let me get this started. I'm just going to get right into it and tie that arm right down. So, a lot of you love the idea of a game changer, especially a feathered game changer. But for whatever reason, maybe it's, maybe it seems like a tough one to tackle. There might be a prohibitive cost factor, whatever it might be. We're going to try to change your mind a little bit on a couple things here with this fly. So, first thing, I want you to not get too angry with me, but I've got an actual yellow Polliwog Tail. And you might look for that on the website. You're not going to find it. I dyed this myself because, well, I can. Alright, so for this tail, I'm going directly onto the shank like so. And you've seen a lot of Josh's videos, and if you get too short on this tail, it might look cute, but you're not going to get much movement out of that. So let's just back it down to about that 3/4 mark, and that's where I want to pop this tail in. I'm just going to get a couple really strong wraps on here, and at that point I'm going to trim out this tag end. Again, we're working on some pretty small shanks here. 9mm is not a lot of room, so be mindful of your space. And as far as tying other streamers and everything else from nymphs to small dries, I will say tying articulated streamers, especially something along this specific style, is going to improve the rest of your fly tying. So yeah, it might be a little nerve-wracking at first, but you're only going to benefit from trying this. Alright, the next thing we have here, I've got 3 feathers from a 4B hand saddle, and I forgot to get these prepped for you guys, so forgive me for just 2 seconds. You'll have to just listen to me talk. What I'm going to do here, and this is maybe good, I'll show you with this first set and then I'll get the rest prepped before we move on. I want to tie all these feathers in at the same time. I'm going to trim them and tie them in by the tip. Now, you can do this a few ways. You can prep a feather, hold it there to see, alright, my active working fibers are going to stick out that much. That's great, and then progress up with slightly larger feathers. But when you're doing something like this, the feathers don't have to get very much bigger at all. And so what's more important is that you look at your actual hackles and check out each saddle and look at them together. So I'm going to be using 3 colors of saddle today, and what I have to look at is where is the common denominator in all 3 of those saddles, not just the pretty one that I like to use the most, but they all 3 have to provide that section of specific length fiber. And so what you'll notice is on some you might get to use from top to bottom on a saddle, and then the next one you might go, wow, they have some really small fibers, I have to start in the midway of this saddle. So by all means, a little prep work is going to go a long way. All 3 ready, I just need to trim them, but they are stacked one atop the other. And as far as, again, just doing that is going to improve your technique on a lot of other flies. Just going to come in here. Once I get this tied in, I'm going to turn it and show you one key here. I don't tie on that quilt all the way back to where the fibers start. Leave myself just a little 1/16 of an inch or so. And what happens is if you do happen to tie those all the way up to the quill, when you take that first wrap of those feathers, you might get a couple stuck and they'll go this way to the front, wherever. They won't go where you want them to go. Doing it this way, clean quill on that first portion of your wrap, and then the feathers train toward the back. And there we go. I'll pick all 3 of these up. Try not to twist or get anything out of order, and at this point just gently start coaxing all those fibers back. When you do this, it'll keep those quills aligned for you, and we can simply start wrapping. And yeah, see that first wrap wants to trap that fiber right there. There we go. Now we're around it clean and passing that. And forgive my fingers, again, it's a 9mm shank. I will get out of the way as much as I can as we tie this fly. And yes, I am sort of giving a little twist to that quill as I wrap, so that I'm on the inside, concave side of those feathers on the quill. Alright, this is where I'm going to tie it off. I need to be cleaner here before I get to that point. And one thing about changers, you know, you can tie them as full as you want if you keep this in mind. If you clog that eye, this shank won't swim, because when you attach the next shank, it's going to block it. And so there we go. That's where I need to be. I got a few more fibers to get out of the way here, and I don't have my water, otherwise we'd have wet fingers and this would be done by now. Let's just do this. Forgive my lack of a clean separation there. I'm just gonna work it through and pretend we're doing a matuka. There we go. All right, at this point I can bring them all back, get 2 wraps in front of all those feathers. And now I can see my separation. I get my scissor in there, and if anything, this is where you just want to take a deep breath. Don't rush anything, because there's a lot of work to do on this fly, and we've all been there, but tragedy strikes at the worst times, and it's usually right as you look at your last section and go, oof, I should have redone the second one. So let's not do that. Let's not be hasty. Take our time. And brush those fibers out of the way. We don't want to trap them. Build a nice little thread neck right there, and we'll whip finish. Oh, you can see I'm trying to trap those fibers every turn. There we go. A little bit better. One. Let's do a second. But if anything is of key importance here, it's the cleanliness of the eye. Cut this thread out, and it will turn toward you, and you can see that eye clean as a whistle, and that's what we need. Alright, so now let me grab some head cement and we'll coat these thread wraps. Alright, and we're just looking to coat the thread. I hope at this point I don't have to say it, but I will anyway. Be very cautious. Pay attention. Don't get any head cement on those fibers. You put all that effort in. You don't want to mess it up just because of the head cement. Alright. And now, before I pop this out, I have my next shank. So we started on the 9mm. Now I'm going to pop in my 10mm. So I opened that arm a little bit with a plier, and then it just slips in. Once I slip the 10mm shank into the vise, I'll close that down with the plier before I absolutely close it down with the thread. Alright, so now let's pop this sucker out, transition, and move our 10mm into the vise like so. And this one seems to want to play pretty well for us. Let me clamp that down a little bit. But what I was talking about with the pliers, after that's in there, just come in and give it a little squeeze down. And as you can see, like it's not going to make it perfect, but look how close it is to the. It makes it almost effortless to just get your thread started. Boom, tie that arm down. You're ready. You're in it for business now. All right. So let's really make this strong. Again, we're going after some monster fish here with this. And keep in mind, just full disclosure, this is my interpretation of a Leggy Boi feathered game changer that is going to be built to fish the way I fish, meaning for my own style. So after you get to master this fly, by all means make it your own. Alright, so now we're going to add an element, but first we need to tie in our feathers for this shank. So don't get crazy and think you're going to tie in your feathers after the legs. By all means, tie your feathers in first. So as you can see, got them stacked, trimmed, 4 feathers on this second shank, 3 yellow, 1 orange. We're going to transition from yellow to red by the end of this, so it has to go yellow, yellow, orange, orange in the middle to orangish red to red. So we have 3 yellow feathers. We have 1 orange feather. Watch this first wrap. Boom, right behind where the end of that arm is. And then I'm going to get these tied in, and I'm going to turn this and show you something. I don't tie all the way to the fibers. I leave myself a gap, so when I take that first wrap, I don't get fibers poking this way, that way, backwards. They're all going to go where I tell them to go. So give yourself that little bit of room before you start wrapping feathers, and it will make a world of difference for you. I'm going to trim out all the butt ends, and again, that's why I said watch where that first wrap of thread goes. If I tied that right behind the eye, there'd be no way for me to keep this clean and trim these out. So I'm sorry that this is going to be a long, slow process, but if you want to know how to do it right, this is how, at least in my world. Alright, so now you can see there's not a ton of room on this. We're working on a 10mm shank. Of course there's not a lot of room. But, Leggy Boy, guess we better put some legs in here. So, for this first section with the legs, I've got some medium round rubber legs from Hareline. This is the color yellow. I'm using 2 of them. As you can probably guess, that will transition as well as we move forward. Now, as far as spacing, you can kind of just aim for the middle on this, because if you could go front or back, that'd be way too easy. We like a challenge. Here's your challenge. I'll pop 2 of these legs right down in the middle, like so. About there. And what I'm looking for, honestly, is to get 1 wrap of feathers behind and maybe 2 in the front of it. Either way, it's going to have to be a 2 and 1. I'm only going to get 3 wraps because I'm using 4 feathers. If you were using 2, perhaps you could get a different move on there. So you can see I'm going to just make that little bump there. I don't want it too crazy. I'm going to check, do I have room for a wrap of feathers behind the rubber legs? It's iffy. I think we can make it work. I'm going to get these separated out a little better. Bring them out. There we go. That's what I needed. A little, I don't know what the technical term is. We'll go with a little boop and call it good. Alright. 1, 2, 3, 4 feathers like we planned. And get these all matted back. Well, get them trained, if you will. Bring these down so that they'll play nicer before we get to that point. Alright, so as I'm going to start this again, because of limited room, let's get 1 full wrap behind the rubber legs, and then we'll move to the front of the rubber legs. So there's our 1 full. At this point I can kind of go in between them, crisscross if you will, and then the key, just make sure those bottom fibers are out of your way before coming in with that next wrap of feather. And if it'll play nicely with us for 1 more turn here. Orange feather is not wanting to cooperate. Let me undo so I can see what's going on. There we go. And that's where we're going to finish. But if we tried to finish there and tie on the bottom, it would probably clog that up a little bit. As you can see there, see that? That's a no good look. So back it off, and to make this finish here, clean your fibers 90° off of that, which means on my side. I'll get these all prepped, pulled out for that roughly clean V. And again, this is so difficult because we have a small area to work in and a feather fibers peeling off of here, just trying to go in their natural form. And so you have to just adjust as you go. All the fibers come back. 2 thread wraps in front. All 4 of those butt sections now can carefully be trimmed out. And again, what we're looking for, and this is an easy way if you're honest with yourself to know if your fly is going to work. We're looking at the cleanliness of this eye, and there it is. It's clean. Fibers back, clean thread neck, And these little fibers here won't affect a thing except for my OCD. And it looks like I'll just have to get over it. There you go, we're all growing today. Alright, finish this off with a couple whip finishes, as you see there. If you get too close, it wants to grab those fibers a little bit, so just coax that thread, talk to it, promise it something. There we go. One. Let's hit that second whip finish. 4 wraps per, and voila. This is going to be some kind of a nice looking fly when we get done. Alright. Bet you can't figure out what comes next, but if you guessed head cement, well, you're the lucky winner. Let's coat those thread wraps. And again, I'm going to be moving a little bit faster as we go, at least that's my hope. I do want you to understand what goes on inside of not just a Leggy Boi, but the Game Changer, or any articulated fly for that matter. Alright, so before we throw this next shank in, or actually we could throw the next one in, which is going to be, if we remember, tail shank 9mm, second one 10, which makes us onto the 11mm, right? So we're going to rest that in there. But what I want to do is I don't want to wait until I've got the whole fly finished and then move all this stuff just to get at the legs and make some cuts. So let's cut these first legs, and what I want is for it to come just past the midpoint of the tail, and that looks pretty good right there. And then just kind of eyeball it, match it up on your side, and trim those as well. So that's going to be the look of our first legged section. So we have the tail, no legs. First section after the tail is going to start our legs, and much like we did previously, pop them out, and now we are on to the 11mm shank. And if your vise at home doesn't want to play nice with these shanks, I can tell you the answer: Stomful Elite. You can put whatever you want in there. You can probably make breakfast with it if you really tried. Alright, snug and secure. Once again, you see pretty severe arm gap there on this one. Bring it down, let it kiss, make contact there, and we'll come in with the thread and solidify. And I do like to work this thread, as you see here, at an angle under that arm. I don't want to come over the top from an angle, because then I risk cutting it on that front edge. So once I have it solidified, it's good to go. Trim out the tag. Voila. And like we did previously, finish tying down all of that. And if you do it right, this is going to be a super strong fly. Not just super strong, super strong. Alright, so again, let's get into these feathers, shall we? And so we did 4 feathers on the previous, and they went yellow, yellow, orange, yellow. On this one, we're going to incorporate 2 yellow, 2 orange, and so I'm going to stack them yellow, orange, yellow, orange. Is it going to matter? In my world it sure does, only because to get this to blend properly and finish the way we want it to, if you have something in mind, by all means write it down, maybe even go to the point where you sketch out where you think this needs to end. And for me, writing it down gives me another visual. My brain does the calculations. By the time I sit to the vise, my mind already has an idea of what needs to happen, and so it becomes a sixth sense, second nature, whatever you want to call it. And let's tie in these feathers again. There's that gap between where the fibers start and where my tie off is. If you want cleaner flies, cleaner wraps on your feathers, that's one way to do it. Get those butt ends all trimmed out. That was not a very good first cut. There we go. Again, pay attention to that eye. Now is the time to keep it clean, not after you've already finished that shank. You'll shank me for it later. There we go. And if a lot of you out there that are watching this happen to be golfers, I'm sorry that you're going to have to hear me say the word shank so many times. But since it's for the sake of fishing, it doesn't translate. And so as long as you're tying flies, you can say shank as many times as you like. There we go. Alright, again, we're aiming for that middle portion of this shank. And we went from 10 mil to 11 mil, and you're thinking, well, at least it's bigger. Well, it's really not much bigger. Alright, one thing we're going to change, I told you about the transition of the legs. So now we've got still one medium round rubber leg in yellow, but we've also got one perfect rubber leg. And I believe this is the shrimp color, shrimp orange. Don't quote me on that. Alright, so again, bring it up, veiled over my thread, bring it to the shank here. A couple thread wraps, that's not going anywhere. I position. 2 on my side, 2 on your side, 1 of each color, like so, and tie down. And as far as the direction I'm going for on these legs, at this point, I kind of just want them coming off the side. Nothing crazy. Just make sure it's where you want it before you wrap it in or wrap it down. Do you see that fiber? Ooh. There we go. I see one's already cut underneath, but we'll deal with it. And mash it all down. There we go. So now our legs are going to have a subtle transition. Our feathers have a subtle transition. But when you're doing multiple shanks, at the end of it all, it's going to be fantastic. Alright. You see my stack's not exact there. So I'll make sure it is. Redo. And get those quills sort of lined up. This one's not playing really nicely, but that's good. I want you guys at home to know this doesn't go picture perfect every time we sit down and tie a fly. We have issues too. There we go. Now get those legs out of there one more time. Maybe 2 more times. We'll see. Alright. Look at them. They're trying to just not play. Alright, enough messing with that. We got the water out. So here's the difference. If I get my fingertips wet and get these fibers coaxed back, they're actually going to stay there pretty well for me. That's going to give me an extra second or 2 on each wrap. And doesn't sound like much, but that's all I need. Get these legs out of the way on my side. I see a couple trapped fibers, but I'm not going to cry over it yet. Get these in front, or I'm sorry, behind still. What I'm trying to accomplish on this one is to get the full 4 wraps, but I don't know if that's going to happen. Get that guy undone. There we go. You see, it's a little bit tedious tying this, but you won't be a rock star. You gotta play the songs you don't always like. Alright, let me undo the curve on that one on top. Restack my feather. And try not to pull the others apart. There we go. Nothing to it. There we go. Now we bring them back and get everything kind of working in front of the legs at this point. Like so. Again, trying to wrap on the flat portion of the concave side. Get those legs out of there. And once again, this is going to be cleaned off here. Get my fingertips wet and get those out of the way as much as I can before coming up like this. And it's not quite clean, but again, when you're dealing 4 feathers, small shank, you do it as best as you can. There's one. Just going to tie off these feathers here. Try to work it through those fluffier fibers. There we go. Everything comes back, and we'll get a couple thread wraps in the front, like so, and trim out. I wish there were a market for used portions of feathers. I could make a bundle right now. Trim that last one out. Do you have my nifty little Stomfo comb here? So I'm just going to gently make sure there are no trapped fibers, release what I can, and then get a cleaner tie off when I make this little thread neck. And there we go. I want to work that thread back one more wrap. There, that's perfect. And you see the tension there will expose these fibers that weren't supposed to be part of the section going back. And that's, again, making a clean V. You would be able to see those, but it gets a little crowded right there at the end. So there's another way to do it. Tidy it up. One whip finish. And for good measure, a second. I'm going to toss some head cement on here, but while I do, have a look at the eye, make sure we're staying clean, and there you go. I don't know about you, but I like this progression so far. Like I said, you can kind of go off of a tequila sunrise style here, depending on where you live. If you wanted to be a little bit more specific to your own area, well, by all means, adjust. This is one way to tie one version of one fly. Now, there are a million of each of those. So, again, if this isn't going to float your boat, well, get a different boat. Find something else to float it. Whatever you got to do to make it yours, that's all. That's what we're doing here. We're tying flies. Alright. Get my legs untangled, and then I'm going to trim this set the same way I did this first one. The only difference is on this one, I'm just looking to come in 1/8 inch, maybe 1/4 inch at the most, short of our previous leg. We do want this to be a lot of leg action, and so doing pretty good so far, everybody. Knocking out these shanks like there's nothing to it. So now we're going to move into our last shank for this fly, and that's going to be a 12mm. Pop this out and see how we're looking here. Pretty buggy so far. One leg just tried to move in the wrong direction, but I think we'll be all right. Get that settled into the vise. And I can tell you, after the shanks and you're onto the hook, it becomes much easier. Alright. Come in one more time with the pliers here. Just give a nice soft mash down. And then bring the thread in to solidify and tie it all the way down. And this is where I slip a couple thread wraps under, and you see I come midway on the arm instead of at the end. No thread breakage and no tears. If I'm going to have tears today, it'll be from the legs or the feathers, not from the shanks. There we go. I mean, look how monstrous this is now compared to the 9mm we started on. Alright. For our feathers on this one, if you remember, the last one we had 2 yellow, 2 orange, but this is going to be our progression. So we're going to go 1 yellow feather, 2 orange, and 1 red. And the way I'm going to stack them is yellow first on the bottom, followed by orange, followed by the red feather, and then on top of those 3 will be the orange feather for a total of 4. So yellow, orange, red, orange. Take your time. I'm sorry that you guys are having to wait on me, but if you don't get these stacked right, it's just going to make it a nightmare for you to wrap them. So by all means, take your time, get them stacked properly. All that trim out work, don't want to negate it because you're trying to be in a rush. If you're looking for flies to tie in a hurry, this is not the one. Alright, I've got them stacked again, trimmed up. So I'm going to just get these tied in before we get our legs going here. Get all those fibers back, like so. Again, right there. Not at the eye, right there. Leaving myself plenty of naked space there before the fibers actually begin. Cut out all those butt sections. Be picky right there, and be picky on the bottom. Tie them all down like so. Alright, right in there somewhere. Time to tie those legs in. This time we've just got two of that shrimp orange in the perfect round rubber leg. Veil it over, wrap it around my thread, and bring it up to the shank, and simply tie it in again right around midpoint, and separate them out, two to my side, two to yours. Tie it down. So okay, and it feels like we're inside of a limousine on this 12mm shank, doesn't it? Alright, so now all four feathers come up. Make sure the quills are in the middle and aligned. We'll start coaxing these fibers out from the quill and then bringing them back together over the quill. Wet fingertips, don't forget. Alright, on your side, out of the way, first pass. Coming to my side, you can see a couple of those fibers already jumping on me. I'm not going to get too crazy on that. There we go. So you can get your finger in there if it'll fit. Now, I tried to be cute. You guys busted me. Let's get that leg out of the way and start that again. Alright. And the fix for this, just more water on my finger before I take that turn, and then they all behave the way they should. So these two, like so, get my side out. See, it's not my legs, it's your side of the legs that just give me trouble. So it can never be my fault, just so you know. Alright, I'm going to get two full passes behind the legs on this one. There we go. Like that. And it's filling up. It's going to be pretty. Alright, so now let's get in front of these legs. Get some fibers moving on front of the shank, like so. And again, if it's giving you trouble, back up a little bit and come on in, and it'll just undo itself the way it's supposed to. And now create my little V here, taking my time. I want to use as many of those good fibers as I can before I get to that fluffy stuff. So let's, on this, since we do have the 12, it's going to give us a little extra room, and by all means I'll use those extra fibers. I'll take them. You don't want them, I'll put them to use. So we're upside down, same deal. Fibers back, 2 thread wraps in front, and now I'm just going to turn a little more, and we can cleanly, safely remove all those feathers, like so. And before I tie it all the way down, get my comb and release all those fibers that we can. And even if you do see a couple trapped fibers at this point, when you get this out of the vise and it's all had time to dry out and all that, like you'll quickly realize they weren't necessarily trapped. It's just they get moist and then they hold on to each other a little differently. So just be patient, let it dry out, and then fluff it after it's all done drying. And one more whip finish and we're ready to move on to the actual hook here. I don't know if you're excited, but I surely am. Trim out the thread and cement your thread wraps. Once I'm done cementing this, I'm going to turn that camera off just because I need to reset it so that it doesn't click off on us. And we'll start in on that hook. Oh yeah. Really liking the progression of the color. And of course, we all know what that movement's going to be like in the water. Okay, now it's time to move on to the hook, but just so you guys understand what goes on when I'm tying this, I'm going to take my whip finish tool through that shank. And you might be going, well, that's crazy. Is it just to keep the cement dry? No, that's only part of it. It's so that I remember which way is up and down. And I know it doesn't seem like it matters at this point because we're not adding weight or anything. But if there were a top and bottom to this, you'd want to know how to do it. So I simply hook it from the bottom and then I set it off to the side. And now when I go to put this back onto the hook and attach, I know which way it was oriented when I was tying. So this is our workhorse for today. We've got the Ahrex SA254. This is a size 2 for the bead. Again, this is for me to fish, and what I'm looking for is a very lightweight fly that's going to have a lot of suspension time or hang time, but still has this flow and exaggerated dead flesh type movement to it. And I can tell you, this doesn't happen by accident. It comes from tying a bunch of these, going and fishing them, and then going, nope, this is exactly how big, how many shanks, how many wraps of lead, whatever it might be. That's the only way to truly figure out what fly is going to work the best for how you happen to fish. I was talking, so I don't know how many wraps. We'll call it 12-ish. Cut that using the curved inside portion of my cuticle scissor to round that over, and that wasn't a very good round over. Let's try that again. I don't want that bump there. Okay, and trim out the back. Round it over as well, and slick all that into the back side of that bead, and again the bulk of the bead on the outside of the shank so that it'll keel properly. And we're ready to tie that down. Get our thread started. Cut that tag end out. And now we're going to use some angled wraps with our thread. 45-degree angle going up, 45-degree angle the opposite direction going back. And again. And again, one more time, and one more time. Now we'll come in with straight on wraps of thread that will begin to pull those X wraps into the weighted wires, prevent it from expanding, and hold everything in place, including our bead. All right, you've seen a lot of ways to attach articulations and different things. I'm going to show you what might be my new favorite way. Here I've got a spawn shank 19mm. You can see I've opened the arm a little bit. Great. First thing I need to do, I want to eliminate this eye. Got a little all-purpose tool here. Wire cutter worked just fine. No eye. So now, remember I talked about how we take that other portion of our fly off, and so if this is how it was oriented in my vise, you see the hook is upside down now. So I don't want to come from the bottom. Actually, I want to come through the top of that last shank, because now I flip the whole thing over. So this bottom now matches the bottom of my hook, And all I'm going to do now is look at where that is going to look pretty natural. And remember, we still have to tie that arm down, and it happens to butt up against the back side of our wire. Isn't that convenient? So there we go. Get our handy dandy plier back out, and be careful on this because it will twist on you. Mash it down as much as you can and finish with your thread. Slick it under that arm a little, and break it. Knew it had to happen at some point, but I told you guys today the frustration was going to be the legs and the feathers. This is nothing. No sweat. Trim it, get a good end on your thread, and restart it. If you needed another cup of coffee, well, now would be a great time. Alright, so now restarted my thread. We'll just find the tag end there, and you can see there's not much left of that previous one. And so what I'm going to do is find it, pull it as tight as I can, and then tie it down. Now I can trim that lost piece out. And we're starting like nothing happened. I see it on your side, but we're going to tie it down anyway. Like so. Really pull that arm down. Alright. When I'm done with this little spot here, I'll let it go. Do you see what happens? There's nothing restricting the movement of that shank. So when this is in the water, you get the full movement that you spent so much time and effort to achieve. That's how you do it. But since there's nothing to bend back and create strength that way, I will come in with some super glue gel on my side and your side of where that shank meets the hook shank. And now begins the dance with the thread. Don't be shy. Don't go too crazy because we do want an even underbody. But now I'm going to work this super glue gel all the way back and forth with my thread. And by doing so, it's going to work through those thread wraps. It's going to solidify not just the arm of the shank to itself and all that, but solidify the shank to the hook shank. And there's no way that's coming undone. And the beauty too is we have the hook point here, so once they bite that, this is all free flowing. Chances are they're not snagging that on a tooth or anything crazy. So this is my new favorite way of attaching. So let's bring this all back. I'm just going to use my fingers now and mash in any of that wet glue still. I don't want to deal with a fiber getting stuck on there, any of that. Great. So when I said earlier, once you're done with the shanks, this fly becomes a little bit simpler. And I think it's just because there's less movement of the rubber legs and all that good stuff. So again, we're going to go with 4 feathers. And on this one, we are transitioning to 3 orange feathers and 1 red. So this will be the first section without any yellow feather in it, I believe. And so we're going to go 2 orange feathers to start, 1 red for our 3rd feather. And I'm going from bottom to top when I say 2 orange and then 1 red. So 2 orange on the bottom, a red in the 3rd position, and on top another orange feather. Forgive me for stacking these again, but like I said before, this is the time to be picky. You've got a lot already invested time-wise and material-wise and all that, so don't be silly and ruin it at this point by speeding it up. Tie it in, again that gap at the back. So I'm not starting against a fiber, I'm giving myself that first 1/8 or 1/10 of a turn fiberless, and then I can see everything clear. Thread out of the way. All 4 feathers come up. Get our fingers wet. Coax those feathers all out, or the fibers all out. And then I can see that one of my feathers has just slightly adjusted. Restack. All the quills are now in the center. And I can start bringing those fibers back toward each other and begin that wrap. And that wasn't very clean, was it? See that one stuck fiber. There we go. And when your feathers are different lengths, sometimes this will come into play for you. I've got something trapped there in the wrong spot. Just undo it, take a look, start again. Got some wispy fibers on that last feather that are just being a pain. There we go. Now we're cooking with peanut oil. And I see one trapped fiber. I think we'll be okay. And you see here we're getting into those wispier fibers. So I will just simply bring my thread down and make sure I don't have a rubber leg caught in there. Bring those up. Need to clean it just a little more. There we go. I can work with that. Find that V in there. Get those quills really tightened down against the shank. 4, and now we'll move it up. Again, a couple thread wraps in front, and I can pop these out. Little comb action, brush it up. As you can see, we are going to have a bit of a taper here, which is what you want. And again, that comes from paying attention in your prep work. Just moving ever so slightly up that cape or saddle as you're going for the next round of feathers. Alright, so now we're not going to tie and then move feathers around the legs. We're just going to go in sections. So we had a section of feather. For this section of leg, we're still going 2 of that shrimp orange, and we forgot to trim those last legs, but we'll get to that. So in the middle is what we're looking for. Veil it over the thread and bring the whole thing up like so, and 2 on your side, 2 on my side. Use your fingers, mash it down so that they're coming off the sides. One thing you want to avoid is you don't want them pointing down off of this, because then it's going to interfere with that hook shank. You see, so when we flip this over to ride hook point up like it will, they're all going to fall in line, and then we're going to have feathers keeping them there. So this will be great. Come in and tie that down a little bit cleaner for our next section of feathers, like so. And I did say we forgot to trim those previous, that previous leg section. As long as you remember to do that first section, the rest should be fairly simple. So I'm just, again, coming an 1/8 inch shy of a previous, not this section, this section. Let me find one leg to base that off. There we go. And then we can do our most recent legs, so we don't forget again. If I do, someone please remind me. There we go. So now we're ready for our next section of feathers, and now we're going 2 orange, 2 red. I will start with orange on the bottom, so it's going to progress orange, red, orange, red. At least in theory. One more and we'll be ready for the tie-in here. Alright. And if you notice, we didn't use any shouldering material or prop material, if you will, which is pretty common in these changers. And again, this is all based on my preference, my style, and this fly doing specifically what I need it to do for one species. So by all means, this is not the only way you should tie this fly. You should make it your own, but until then, by all means, watch what everybody else is doing, try them all, find one that works for you. Alright, so now we've got them stacked and trimmed. We can tie these in. And there we go. There's not a lot to trim out here, but just for the sake of keeping it clean up front before we get there and add up too many materials, let's go trim those out and tie off nice and clean there. Alright, thread back up to the front. Fibers all coaxed out, and then realign your quills. These feathers can get a little slick. It's almost like playing with silk. So again, as long as you tied them in, stacked them nicely, you can adjust. And let's start wrapping these bad boys. So this section, 2 red, 2 orange. There we go. Keeping it clean. And that's going to be our last section there before it gets too unruly and we get those webby fibers. We're trying to stay away from those webby fibers. They don't flow off the quill in the water like the rest of the feather. It's just wanting to move a little. We're going to pick that as our spot. See that? 1, 2, 3. Pull back, 2 in front. And voila. Comb. Quick fix. There you go. And second to last section of legs, and now we have one of the shrimp orange and one red of perfect rubber legs. And let's get those veiled over the thread and tied in. There we go. So for all of you out there that like chasing the big species, big bass, big anadromous species, whatever it might be, especially pike, all that good stuff, don't sleep on this fly. You should give it a chance. If you don't want to tie it, you know, either bribe or trick your buddies into doing it. Whatever you got to do, get your hands on some of these to go fish them. Alright, again, I'm going to just trim those legs a little bit. If we quit dropping scissors, that'd be great. There we are. I'm sure you guys at home never drop your scissors though. 1/8 inch shy of that last batch. And we'll do the same on your side. Make sure you get the right 2 legs. You cannot add length to your legs once you've cut them. Looking pretty snazzy. There we go. Threads in position, and we are on to our second to last section of feathers now. And for this one, if you remember the previous section, 2 red, 2 orange. This section will be 3 red, 1 orange. But on this one, I'm going to go red on the bottom and then orange and finish it with 2 reds on top. So again, it's going to go red, orange, red, red on this section. And for those of you keeping track at home, I believe this should be feathers section 23 through 27. But who's counting? Actually 24 through 27. Sometimes they stack nicely, most of the time they don't. Keep that in mind. Patience goes a long, long way on these flies. Get that tied in. Oh, right there. Tag section there, like so. Continue tying down. And let's do it again. Prop both sides out, away from the quill. Get your fingers wet and start coaxing them back. And then we'll wrap. And we're going to finish on top again. And you see we got a little bit of webbiness going on this one, but that's alright. It's still going to be just fine. A couple here and there, I'm not going to cry. Get that on top. Pretty clean V. And bring your thread right through it. 4 wraps on this one. Pull them back, couple wraps. Safely trim out. I don't know about you, I'm pretty excited to get on this last section of legs and feathers here. But it is looking awfully nice. There we go. Comb. Any trapped fibers, now's the time. Loosen them, pop them free. And bring it back. Alright, so for this last section, we've got 2 more legs. And these are again the perfect round rubber leg, but these are both in the red. Alright, so the veil over the thread, and our last time, bring it up and tie it down. 2 on my side, 2 on your side. I don't know about you, I kind of like this fly. It's looking pretty already. Like so. And let's cut these real quickly before we forget again. Hit my side again, 1/8 inch shorter than the previous legs. If you do that all the way up, it'll be consistent. And like so. Smash that down, and last but definitely not least, our final section of 4 feathers. All 4 are red, so I don't care which way you stack them, as long as one on top of the other. Got to come out right. Good spot for your tie in there. Trim out those tips. Don't need those. Really make sure this one's a clean trim, because once behind that bead we can't really do anything to change that. So cleanliness counts the most on this one. There we go. All 4 feathers come up. I can feel that they're not sitting. There we go. Like so. Fibers out, and then coax them back. And get my fingertips wet again here, and keep these fibers all together and moving the way they should. There we go. It's going to come into a goofy half wrap finish here, but that's alright. We don't mind. Like so. There it is. Get that thread in between that V there. Keep our separation as clean as we can. A little more moisture on the fingers. Not going to hurt a thing. Just remember, this fly is going to be completely submerged, so if it can't handle a little moisture now, You definitely don't want to take it fishing. Thread wraps in front. Safely trim out that last section of feathers. And one more time with that comb. Release any trapped fibers all the way around. Whatever you tie down now is yours to keep. Alright, all these fibers come back. Really, really solidify everything with a nice thread neck right there behind the bead. And let's get a couple whip finishes in here. 2, 3, 4 for the first one, and we'll do it again. There's one. I'm working this left to right, going forward on each pass. There we go. And let me get a little head cement on here, and we'll have a peek at this fly. At this point, I'm pretty convinced as long as there's a fish in the water, it's going to eat this thing. I'm not a fish and I'm considering taking a bite. I hope you guys all stuck with this. I know it's a long video, a lot of information, a lot going on with this fly. Definitely not in the easy category, but man, is it worth it. And there you have it, folks. A little tequila sunrise action on a Leggy Boi feathered game changer. Progression of not just color, but also a little taper on the size. And I don't know, to me, that's a lot of fun on a hook right there. I sure hope you guys enjoyed. I know I had fun tying this one. If you like these more involved flies, by all means let us know in the comments below, and we'll see if we can't make you happy and give you some more torturous fun on the vise. As always, please hit subscribe and like, and we will see you guys on the water.